doomsday clock, which represents the likelihood of a human-made global catastrophe, have moved the clock 30 seconds up to 2 minutes to midnight due to the likelihood of climate change. I mean, the impacts of climate change as well of nuclear war. So the scientists, as always, are heralding the call for us to take this seriously. And then this headline, I hope you can see it, which says Vietnamese farmers are migrating en masse to avoid climate change, is just another example of the human impact of climate change, which can sometimes be subtle. So what's happening in Vietnam is in one of the most important agricultural areas in Vietnam, the farmers are migrating. Some are saying that it's up to 24,000 people per year are migrating from this area due to salt water encroaching on what used to be rich agricultural lands. So they're migrating into urban areas, and of course that's creating a lot of pressure in concentrated places, and also just the lack of opportunities in those places. So it's a very complex thing, but we know that the human impact is real. But we, as people of faith, are also people of hope. And for this year's Earth Day campaign, the team chose this sentence, this phrase from Laudato Si to inspire us, that, as Pope Francis said, let's bring the whole human family together, for we know that things can change. But even though the context and what we're seeing from scientists and even in our own surroundings can be somewhat alarming, we maintain our faith and our hope that through the grace of God and through our own participation, we can change things to make sure that we're able to protect our common home and to provide a healthy future for our children and grandchildren. And so that's the spirit with which we're launching this Earth Day campaign. So since 1970, when Earth Day was instituted, the world has come together to celebrate the Earth and ways that we can protect it. And so this year, Earth Day, which of course is April 22nd, we're inviting hundreds of parishes around the world to come together to protect creation and address climate change. So Earth Day is a day of solidarity with each other, the Creator, and all of creation. And I wanted to share this next quote from Sister Patricia McDermott, who is the president of the Sisters of Mercy, who says that Earth Day is about renewing our commitment to live in right relationship with Mother Earth and collaborating with others to address the systemic causes of climate and ecological degradation. So one thing that we're excited about with Earth Day this year is that Earth Day falls on a Sunday. So having it on a Sunday gives us even more opportunity to bring our love and our celebration of creation into Mass. So for this Earth Day, we have two things that we're inviting Catholic communities to do. And the first is what I just mentioned, which is one to celebrate creation during the liturgy by looking for opportunities to wave creation care into Mass. And Marissa will speak more about that. And then the second piece is advocate. So as people of faith, we're called to lift up our voices together, which together can be very powerful. And we're going to be encouraging everybody to write to our diocese to collaborate in this huge project of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, with the first step being the pledge. So we're very excited about this Earth Day campaign, and we hope that each of you will participate in making this a success. And to share more about the details, I'll turn it over back to Marissa, and she'll go into that. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing what everybody's going to be doing.
Well, thank you so much, Christina, for that introduction and for setting up sort of why this is so important and why we're doing this. I also wanted to mention, I saw in the chat box somebody asked for an explanation of the doomsday clock, and The doomsday clock is something that a group of international scientists from a variety of disciplines actually put together during the Cold War. And it was really to look at how close humans were to a global catastrophe, one that was really of our own making. And over the years, it's really ticked closer and further away from midnight. Since the Cold War ended, it had really been receding, but most recently, because of the renewed threats of nuclear war, as well as the urgency of the climate crisis, it's been reset and is now closer to midnight, and midnight being sort of the doomsday time. So, it's not hard and fast. It's difficult to say exactly what a minute represents, but it's really a visual way of expressing the urgency of action. And as a technical note, for any other questions that you have, we'll definitely have time for questions and answers at the end, but you can type your questions into the chat box and we'll answer them as we're able. So as Christina mentioned, we are looking for people to celebrate and to advocate. And we can celebrate creation by incorporating creation into the Mass. You can use this as an opportunity to commission the parishioners or the green team as they educate and advocate. Any service projects that you do, anything that you're going out to do, any way to welcome them and celebrating the work that they've done. This is a really fantastic opportunity to do that and bring the entire Mass into it and recognize their work. So blessing or commissioning the green team in their work is a really wonderful way to incorporate this into Mass. We'll also have a number of liturgy suggestions, including homily helps, suggested songs, suggested prayers of the faithful, and additional ways to incorporate creation into the Mass, whether that's with the gifts, whether that's with decorations, whether that's an additional prayer service. But our eco-spirituality group is really doing a great job of putting together a lot of different ways that you can make sure that you celebrate creation into Mass on Earth Day and ideally throughout the year. The big difference for our Earth Day program this year from a lot of the other ones we've done is that we're asking you to advocate. And when I say advocate, I'm sure a lot of people think of going to their parliament or their congressional offices, doing a march, something like that. But advocate is really just raising our voices for those who can't speak up for themselves or for ourselves. And so what we're doing is we're actually asking you to advocate within the church. We are hoping to use this Earth Day as an opportunity to push the church and our institutions to making some strong commitments to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And so after Mass, we are asking all of you to collect postcards that will be sent probably to your diocese. But if you're in a university, it can go to university presidents. If you're, part of a different institution that you want to really push to make change, you can consider that. But we're really gearing this towards dioceses and some universities, asking them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And our message is that we as Catholics are interested in taking strong action. We're interested in making changes in our own life, and we are ready to support church leadership in making changes as well. We are not just saying, why aren't you doing this? This is entirely your responsibility. We're saying that we recognize as Catholics, as the body of the church, we all have a responsibility here. And we personally are making changes, and we're asking the church to make changes as well. And the reason we chose this particular advocacy avenue and why we're really focusing on the church is because partly we're huge. There's 1.2 billion Catholics in the world. There's over 200,000 parishes. I think it's actually 220,000 parishes. Thousands of Catholic universities, hospitals, rectories, diocesan offices, and other institutions. A great deal of land that the church owns. We just have a major opportunity to make an impact just by changing the church's individual choices and just by changing our own practices. The other reason, even more important, is that we are visible leaders in our community. When the church makes changes, others will follow. When the church makes changes to our buildings and our institutions, people are going to notice. In a lot of parts of the world, the church is the major healthcare, education, or social service provider. having that big of a community leader make changes is a huge impact. Even in the United States, it's 1/6 of all the hospitals. So this is an amazing opportunity to lead by example and to live out our own faith. We are called to care for creation. We are called to take action. We need to start doing this in a major way. A lot of us in our own parishes, our dioceses, our schools have started to make some of these commitments, but given the urgency and given the strong call from Laudato Si', it's really time for us to live out our faith in a really concerted way. So how it works, we will write postcards to the relevant institution, probably your diocese. The postcards will encourage leadership to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. We have purposefully focused on all greenhouse gas emissions rather than just saying carbon, because we want places to take a broad view. Churches that might have more of a change that they can make by changing the type of refrigerant they use or their food sources. We want them to really consider that. So we want this to be something that is a strong call to action, but not overly prescriptive in how people do this, because there's so many different scenarios around the world. The first step is to take the Laudato Si' pledge. Many of you have seen this pledge already. The pledge is a commitment to pray, act, and advocate to protect creation. It's been endorsed by the Vatican and as well as many other high-level Catholic and environmental leaders. And this is really going to make that strong statement affirming that this is the commitment that the diocese or the university has made. And in your postcard, say that when our institution takes the pledge, it will receive information about ways to protect creation. So we're not just asking you to send this postcard and then we've wiped our hands of this. We're trying to put together some really great resources that dioceses, parishes, universities can use throughout the year and beyond to start reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. In May, towards the end of May, several weeks after Earth Day, we will have a webinar on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And this webinar is going to feature speakers from dioceses who have begun to institute Laudato Si' throughout the diocese. And we are including examples from the Global North and the Global South to talk about how this can be done in a variety of settings. This is a sample postcard. So as part of this, we'll be giving you a sheet with sample messages. I encourage people to tailor this as they see fit. So as you're getting postcards after Mass, people can just copy this down or they can add their own message, but this is just a sample one. Dear Bishop, I am a parishioner at my parish. In keeping with Catholic teaching, I encourage you to shrink the diocese's greenhouse gas emissions. You'll receive hands-on help by taking the Laudato Si' pledge. We have taken steps in our own lives to shrink our emissions. We are here to help you in any measures you would like to take. Thank you, and then sign your name. So because we are advocating, within the church, this is really a shared effort. This is something that we're doing together. We're not telling you that, the church has been doing it wrong so far. We're telling you that we need to just push ourselves a little bit further. And so that's really the tone that we're creating. And so Agnes Richards asked if we're creating our own postcards or will blanks be provided by GCCM. So I will go into sort of our resource pack in just a moment, but yes, we will be creating the postcards. We're going to send you all templates. We are going to ask you to print them online just because this will be happening in so many different places. But we will have the postcards that we'll be sending, the postcard template that we'll be sending to you. So we are encouraging postcard writing after Mass to really engage your entire parish, but you can also seek out other opportunities if there's a major Earth Day event, especially one that has a faith presence in your community that weekend. Definitely attend that. We had some incredibly creative things with the Laudato Si' pledge and Season of Creation last fall and last summer, major diocesan celebrations and Catholic music festivals that people were able to take this pledge to. So if there's other opportunities for postcard writing, definitely bring these there. Try to get as many people engaged as possible. And when you do this, we are also going to have a cover letter for you with more information. So we're going to send you instructions on how to, how to schedule this this postcard writing, how to encourage other people to do so, educational materials for you to share with your parish as to why, and then the postcards itself, as well as instructions for afterwards. And what we're really encouraging is that postcards can be either mailed in or hand delivered. You can call up the diocesan office and tell them that you have these and you want to have a conversation about Care for Creation. But we also have a cover letter that you can deliver with the postcards that explains in more detail what the diocese can begin to do. We know that this is sort of a really, really broad ask, just, reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and save the world. So what we want to do instead is give people some concrete actions. So the cover letter includes instructions about the pledge. It includes instructions for signing up for the post-Earth Day webinar. But then it also includes some initial actions in terms of setting up a committee around Laudato Si and hopefully engaging all of you. We'd love for you to offer, your own services as people to help the diocese achieve this. And then the last step is follow up, follow up, follow up. And this is really kind of key to advocacy in general. After you've delivered the messages, continue the discussion. If you meet with somebody, send them a thank you note, talk about how you can continue the conversation. If they have been mailed in, definitely call to follow up, see who received them, see if there's an opportunity to have this discussion. And as you're doing this, I think it's really important to remember that bishops and dioceses are incredibly busy. They're covering a wide variety of issues. They're providing social services. They're making sure all of the parishes, are up and running. They have the facilities office that has to handle making sure that everybody's, electricity is functioning. They have to do all of the pastoral care. They have to take care of religious education. There's just a lot of things going on. And a lot of the time, if there's resistance to this message, it's not because they don't care for creation. It's not because they don't want to take the steps. It's because it seems like such a big undertaking with everything else that's going on. And that's why it's really important to follow up, to show that this is really of importance to the parishioners, but also to show that you are willing to be a part of this, that you're not asking the people in the diocesan office necessarily to do a lot more work. You're asking them to help create a plan, and then we will go and carry out a lot of the work. Resources available. We are putting together all of these resources. They will be available on the website at the end of February. They include homily helps and other green mass materials, activities for religious education. We really looked for ways to get children engaged in this, an educational PowerPoint. So we'll be providing a PowerPoint with a similar template to this that will really go into why we're doing this, the importance of taking action on climate change, why the church cares. It'll be about a 10-minute PowerPoint, and all of you will have access to that. So if you want to do a presentation right after Mass, when people are going to sign their postcards, you'll have that available. We'll also have bulletin announcements, flyers that you can put up, and pulpit announcements. So for any of you that want to get up and talk after Mass. There will be sign-in sheets as well as sample postcard language. We encourage you, as people are signing the postcards, to sign in as well to get more information about GCCM. What I forgot to put here is that we will also be sending all of you several report back forms. We really want to know how this goes. This is a new thing for us, so we really want feedback on how this worked, on how many people wrote postcards, on whether or not people seem to be engaged. So that report back form is going to be really, really important. We also have a suggested letter to the editor. So for those of you where this is an option, where you have newspapers who accept, letters to the editor, we want you to write in and share that this is happening, so that they can have that as part of their own, Earth Day features and get more media attention. We also encourage you to write letters to the editor to your diocesan paper. So in a lot of dioceses, not all, but in many of them, there is a diocesan paper that comes out once a week, once every 2 weeks, and they have parishioners write in, and this is a really important news source as well. So when you see our letter to the editor template, try to think broadly. You don't want to just send this off to a huge newspaper. You want to send this off to your local paper, you want to send it off to your diocesan paper, and you want to share it with your community. We are also going to have, as I mentioned, a follow-up webinar on how to implement Laudato Si. So we encourage all of you to join that, but we really want you to push on this and let the diocese or the schools, school and universities who join us know that this is an option, and that it will really start to provide them with some concrete measures that they can take. So, all of this, does this work? Weaving creation care into Mass inspires the community. It helps emphasize that this is an integral part of our faith, not a secondary part. Caring for creation is not something that we do after church, it's something we do as a church. And that's a very important message. And you want people to feel included in this who might not have time to go to all of the Green Team meetings, but still care deeply and want to be able to celebrate. Writing postcards together unites us in spirit. It's a concrete action that all of us as individuals can take. It's a way of sharing your own views and what you think needs to be happening at the church. It's really important that that church leaders hear from us about what's important and where we want them to have a focus, because they're wanting to celebrate with us parishioners as well. And then reducing greenhouse gas emissions puts Catholic teaching into practice. This is a concrete way that we can live out Laudato Si. And again, it makes a huge difference to global emissions. What the church does with our major amount of land and property and buildings, what we do has a very, very concrete impact on emissions and what is happening with global warming right now. So our goals are ambitious. We want 500 events around the world, so 500 postcard writings. I encourage you not to be limited by that. If we end up with a lot more than 500, we will be incredibly happy. And we want to have 50 dioceses who have made a commitment by September. So the reason we're looking for September, for one thing, as I told you, a lot of this is going to be follow-up. We don't really expect a lot of people to get their letters on April 23rd and sign up April 24th. But we do want there to be this constant communication. The postcards are the first step, and see commitments. In September, there is something, the Global Climate Action Summit. And what this is a large event that's going to be held this year in San Francisco for the first time that includes commitments to ending climate change or keeping climate change below 1.5 degrees and cutting our emissions from non-state actors. So we're very familiar with the Paris Agreement, which brought every country together. The United States is now pulling out, but almost every country together to make concrete commitments for what our targets were as nations and as states to limiting climate change and cutting our own carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. But there's so much more that can be done by local governments, by cities, by states, by provinces, and also by businesses, by nonprofits, by non-governmental organizations, and by faith groups who also have a huge impact. So this is the first time where all of those groups are going to be coming together to make our own commitments. And we want the Catholic Church to be present in a large way. So we want to have 50 dioceses who have made a commitment by September that can be announced at this Global Climate Action Summit. And our next steps. So first, look into any activities that your diocese already has. You want to be able to celebrate those. If there's something that's happening in the postcards that you're putting out, you can sort of tailor the message to say that this will grow the work that's already been done, or say thank you for doing this. We want to see how we can make a target goal. But tailor that and celebrate what is happening at the moment. What you're going to want to do early on, and the reason we're having this webinar even before we have all of the resources available, is you'll probably want to talk to your pastor about this activity and why you think it's important. Part of that is to get it on the calendar. If you are at a very, very, very busy parish like the one I belong to, the after Mass table reservation that's in the social hall is incredibly important. They're like, we're racing to get those in. So if you're at a busy parish, you want to make sure you get the calendar reservation. But at any parish, because this is something new, because we're writing letters to the bishops, you really want to make sure that your pastor understands what's happening, why, how we're doing this, and in such a respectful way, and make sure they're on board. So that's something that you're probably going to want to have some conversations early on. You'll want to talk to the liturgy committee about having a green mass. This is still, I believe, in the Easter season, so you'll want to make sure that this goes along with their liturgical plans. You'll want to speak to your green team, social outreach group, or any other organization that has volunteers about scheduling something in April and really trying to engage the community. It's better that you're talking about this earlier on, that people understand it, especially with an activity that's really very new. You want to make sure that people are sort of understanding of why this is happening, and going out to those other social groups at the church early on. You should share this with your friends. There's several of us on the webinar today. Please let anyone you know about this particular event. Invite others to participate. Invite others to hold events at their own parishes. And then invite your parish to sign the pledge. So if your parish has not signed the Laudato Si pledge yet, please invite them to do so, ideally before Earth Day, so that they have taken the pledge as well as you're writing this letter. And as a note, if your pastor says that they're good to sign the pledge, you then want to follow that up with, great, can you go online and sign this, or will you give me permission to sign the parish up? We've had a lot of people who've told us that their parish signed the pledge, and I think it's on the strength of a conversation, but then it was never actually registered, and if I don't have the details, I can't register them. So once your parish has said that they would sign it, make sure that it's either something that you follow up and sign them up with, or that your pastor signs it. And then what we also need from you is to be the first to register events. So this is our Mercy to Earth map from last Earth Day, where we had Mercy to Earth events around the world. We'll be doing another map like this, highlighting all of the different events and postcard rating campaigns and how people are being engaged on Earth Day. And when we launch this on February 27th, we'd love to have a few events already on the map. So if you know that this is something that you're going to be doing, please let me know. You can see my email address there, Marissa, M-A-R-I-S-A, at catholiclimatemovement.global. If you send me the information, we'll make sure that this is on the map when it first launches, and that will really help inspire others to register as well. People never like to be the first one on a sign-in sheet. They get nervous about being the first one to step out. So those of you who have really been engaged before and who know you're doing this, please do send me the details. We'd really love to have at least 10 to 15 events on the map as we launch. So that's our event. This is our bold, ambitious Earth Day plan to really start to get the Catholic Church to make really strong commitments. I'd love to open this up to any questions, and we also need to know what you need. We want to hear from you. This is brand new. We haven't done this before. We want to make sure that it works. We've all been thinking about how this is going to work, from our own experience, but I'd love to know if you have concerns, if you are very excited, and just otherwise how this can work for you. So I'd love to open it up to any questions right now, and feel free to type questions into the chat box. Especially if you've raised your hand, it's actually a little bit easier and quicker if you just type your questions in there, and I'll be happy to answer them. And someone shared that there is an Episcopal church in California which has a very good example of doing some concrete ways to cut climate change. I will definitely check them out. So thank you. If you have examples as well, do feel free to let us know about those. So there was one question: can we see the pledge? Yes. So so I'll pull that up in just a moment. Another question is, are you coordinating with the Catholic Climate Covenant in the USA? So yes, we are actually always coordinating with our partners both in the United States and abroad. So we are coordinating with the Catholic Climate Covenant. The Covenant this year is doing a major focus on Earth Day with some of the United States Earth Day groups around reducing plastic and disposables, which we also very much support. We're broadening that because globally we wanted to take a slightly different tack, and we knew that just reducing disposables didn't work across every single diocese. So we have slightly different campaigns this year, but they know what we're doing. We know what they're doing. We try to work really closely with all of our partners, and in a lot of the reducing emissions work in the United States, we'll go through. We'll go through their Catholic Energies program as well. We foresee that working. And we're working with them as well on other ways to track emissions for Catholic churches. And someone asked if the webinar will be available after today. Yes, it was recorded, so we will have this available. A question about whether people from other faiths can participate. We always welcome people of other faiths. Our campaigns are, we're a Catholic organization, so a lot of our materials are geared towards the Catholic Church, but we do welcome others. If someone from another faith wants to adapt this to their own faith denomination, I think that would be fantastic. I would discourage you from having people of other faiths write to the Catholic bishop asking them to take action on climate change, because that seems awkward. I'm not sure how well received that would be. Some people would be fine with it, some people might not. So I would just encourage the advocacy to be kept within people's own denominations. And someone asked if most of the events for the MAP will be the same, special mass and postcard event. Yes, I think that will be most of the events that we see. So we really just want to keep track of where this is happening. And of course, if you do have something a little bit different that you're doing, let us know, and we're happy to highlight that. So we also had another question that if Christina is here, I would love her to talk about, because I know she's working with the Eco-Spirituality group, of if the homilies are lining up with the scriptures readings of the day. So Christina, if you're still here, are you able to speak to that?
Yes. Yes. So the homily helps will be lined up with the scriptures, which I believe are, for the gospel, it's the Good Shepherd.
Great. Thank you. So the other question is that this is being recorded. Will we be receiving the PowerPoint? Yes, I'll be happy to send you this PowerPoint. We'll have the PowerPoint and the webinar available for people to watch after this. And then you will also be receiving, as part of the resources, a PowerPoint that you can deliver at your own parish as well. And another question, so we've had a few questions about just getting the parish more engaged, starting a green team, getting them to sign the pledge. One question about how they can convince their parish to sign the pledge when there's only a small number of people who are really pushing for it, and the pastor is not sure that the whole parish wants to. So I think that that's an interesting point, and I'd be happy to have a longer conversation about that. But in the meantime, I do think it's important to share with the pastor that for one thing, they should be responsive to the needs of the parish, but they should also be leading. So their support is really crucial to getting more people engaged in signing the pledge. It's really important that they're hearing this. If people don't know that it's an option, then they're not going to sign it. What you might be able to do also, if this is something that's not reaching a lot of people at once, is, I don't know exactly how your parish works, but if your pastor is hesitant to sign it without a large commitment from the parish, maybe he would be willing to allow you to put information in the bulletin to try to gather more support, to try to talk to others, to send something to the different parish groups, or you could just have a discussion with the parish council. So if there's a parish council at your parish, that might be a group that, even though it's small, can wield some influence on how they're going to educate the parish about the pledge and Care for Creation, and encourage the parish to sign it. So those would be a couple of my suggestions about how to approach this. And the other questions about resources to start a green team. So yes, on the Global Catholic Climate Movement website, we have some suggestions on how to start a green team. Depending on where you are in the world, there are also some different partner groups. So this is something that the Catholic Climate Covenant has done. I know Trakra in Ireland has some suggestions on how to start a green team. Canadian Development and Peace has some resources. So depending on where you are, there's a lot of very country-specific resources. But then at the Global Catholic Climate Movement site, we also have some resources, as well as an eco-parish guide, which provides some really, really concrete examples of how to start diving into this as a parish. We have a question about if this action could be done by a religious congregation. Would this be good? Absolutely. So the reason we put institutions is because even though we see a lot of people taking this on in their parishes, we want this to be as broad as possible. So any Catholic institution, a religious congregation, a university, a Catholic lay group that wants to take this on would be wonderful. We would love to see that. We have another question about the Green Mass. Do you have examples of how the Green Mass is done? Which I'd love to turn over again to Christina, just because I know she's been working on this so much more. Oh, I'm sorry, she typed it. Apologies. You're still welcome to talk, Christina, but I just saw that you had typed that yes, we will have examples of the Green Mass. So an excellent question. Do you have a carbon or ecological footprint assessment? So at the moment, we do not. There is a wonderful tracker called Carbon Footprint that you can individually sort of try to estimate and figure out exactly what you're contributing. However, this is something that we're currently working on. So we are putting something in place called the Laudato Si Tracker, which we will be launching hopefully by Earth Day, but definitely in the first half of this year. That will allow parishes, university buildings, hospitals, any sort of person who runs a Catholic building to enter their information and assess their own greenhouse gas emissions. It'll range from carbon to others. It will also help people see what they're doing in terms of engaging their parish in this. So there will be a lot of resources there, but thank you so much for asking on that, and that's definitely something that we are putting in track. As we're trying to get these commitments, we want to make sure we have as much in place as possible to really help people meet these, not just tell people this is something you need to be doing, but help them actually achieve it. And so the Laudato Si Tracker, which is coming, as I said, definitely in the first half of this year, and in time to gather some of these commitments, will have that capability. Any ideas for our children's liturgy? We have a number of children's prayer and religious education opportunities that I believe you'll be able to adapt to a children's liturgy of the word as well. A question about the U.S. climate change is a very political topic. Many parishes are hesitant to dive into it. Will you give guidelines on how to tread these waters? So it's challenging because in a lot of parts of the world, this isn't a political issue. It's an issue of will, it's an issue of money, it's an issue of making it a priority, but it's not necessarily a political one. The U.S. is sort of strange in that way. I would be happy to put together, I live in the United States and have worked with the United States Catholic Church on a number of issues for several years. If it would be helpful to do sort of a United States specific webinar at some point on this, I would be happy to set that up. In the meantime, I think it's also something that you sort of need to figure out within your own parish. Some places this is going to be more challenging than others, but I think it's always helpful to remember that when people try to make this a political issue, to push back and say that you're not doing this as a political issue, you are trying to live out the church's commitments. And we do have a strong call from going back, for I think 40 years of modern environmental teaching from the church and teachings from the early church as well. This isn't something that's only happened in the last couple of years. And to really focus on that, as well as focus on some of the lifestyle changes that can be made that are a real way to build community, and something that I think most people in the church would be really happy to see. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this and push back on those who are trying to make it political. So a couple other suggestions about groups to contact who are doing this work. Thank you very much for that. Eco lessons for catechism. Yes, for the religious education, we will have a lot of suggestions. And I think one more question about major renovations. Our Eco Parish Guide has several suggestions on what to do as a parish. And as well as a suggestion from Energy Star for people to use that. So yeah, so we'll have a lot of resources available. I will try to put together an email for all of you who joined us today, as well as those who registered, with a link to some of the resources that we mentioned, particularly our Eco Parish Guide. And as I said, we'll definitely have the webinar recorded in this PowerPoint available for you to look at. So do we have other questions that I can answer today? And I apologize. I know particularly in the questions section, I started to speak rather fast because I saw so many coming in at the same time. So, so I apologize for speeding up there at the end. If anyone had difficulty understanding what I was saying, and it's part of the reason I'll be sure to send the links. All right, do we have any other questions? See them trickling down. One person asked if we're going to have another webinar about climate change. And I think we're trying to figure out what's best, what sort of educational materials we need to put together in terms of webinars that we can provide throughout the year. And I think that's a very good suggestion. We are also, for those of you who have not yet taken it or who would like to encourage others to, I want to make a plug that we will have our Laudato Si Animators course starting during Lent. February 21st will be the first webinar in the United States. We're collecting registrations through February 16th. And that's a really, really wonderful, wonderful program that does include sort of the Climate Change 101. It includes background on the church's teaching. It's it includes organizing work on how to start a green team and take this to others. It's a three webinar series, as well as a final project. This year, the final project will be geared towards Earth Day. So I encourage you to sign up for that as well. And that's highlighted on our website at the moment. And I apologize for not having this up for the final slide. This is the Earth Day website where you can go and just let us know that you'll be interested in receiving the resources as soon as they come out. I've already seen some people sharing that they will be engaged on on Earth Day. Christina shared the email or the website for the animators program. Thank you so much for doing that. And this we will try to have the webinar up and sent to you as soon as possible. The recording for those of you who missed it, or for those of you who would like to share it with others. But we will definitely be sending that around. So with that, I'd love to wrap us up since we're approaching 10 o'clock. If there's other questions, do type them in. Another question about the webinar. So just to reiterate, we will definitely have access to the recorded webinar. I will send that around. We will also send to all of you who joined us on the webinar today links to the different websites that we discussed and the different resources, including the Eco Parish Guide. So you will have that on hand, as well as our PowerPoint. And we encourage you to share additionally this webinar with those who would be interested, and encourage others to join our Earth Day celebrations as well. CatholicClimateMovement.global/Earth Day is the Earth Day 2018 with hyphens. Is where you can find a resource form. So just fill that out and we'll send you all of the resources as soon as they are available on February 27th. And again, this is my email address. Those of you who do know right now that you're doing this, which I've seen some people just send chat messages saying that they will definitely be participating, that they have something reserved already for Earth Day, which is fantastic. Definitely send that to me, and we'll be sure to highlight it as soon as we get this started, so that people can see what's happening around the world. So, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you again for joining us today. I'm very excited about this. I look forward to it, and I really welcome all of your suggestions and participation. And I'll let you all go forth to spread the word and to help us celebrate Earth Day. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all of your work. We couldn't do this without you, and your commitment and your willingness to push forward on this is what's going to help us turn the tide on climate change. So thank you again. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for all of your work. And I hope you have a wonderful day or night, depending on where you are. Bye all.